What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls Podcast. Happy Monday! Free agency! 5 days away! I'm Peck. You can follow me on Twitter at Bulls_Peck. Joined by my guys, Big Dave, Bow, BWL Sports, and Will, the GOAT, Gottlieb. Will_Gottlieb is his Twitter handle. We are at CHGO_Bulls. Our pal producer, Lawrence Benedetto, rocking the controls behind the scenes. Lots to get to today. It is the Monday before the Friday of NBA free agency, one of the best times of the year. There's Lawrence with that big, beautiful smile. So we thought we would spend today's show kind of running down everything the Bulls fans need to know about the upcoming dates ahead, deadlines for players, deadlines for decisions the team needs to make. And also Bobby Marks dropped his free agency like prepper for every team in the league. We'll run down some of the details from his thoughts on the Bulls and also a couple of errors or omissions of what Bobby Marks had as far as who's staying and who's going in Chicago. And then a updated look at Will to go Gottlieb's Bulls salary cap sheet heading into free agency, so we know just exactly what the situation is for the Bulls and if AK actually does have a magic card up his sleeve that involves the Bulls swinging big and entering that luxury tax. All that ahead on today's show. First and foremost, gentlemen, how are we doing? How was the weekend?
Chilling.
I'm still getting over the draft. I feel like that was like a really long time ago, but I think I've just been kind of comatose since then. So
still just riding the Julian Phillips high?
Riding that Julian Phillips high.
Did you get some rest?
I think I just slept the last like 4 straight days. I think that's really what it is.
Good. Yeah. You deserved it. You definitely deserved it.
Sleep is good.
Staying up till 1 a.m. is really hard, you know.
What are you talking about, Will? You're still young. You can do it.
Will's been an old man for a few years. So.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, you get me.
I understand. I got you, Will. I got you, bro.
You got to get that sleep rested up, though. You gotta backlog your sleep as much as you can before we head to Vegas in like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Vegas, baby! So excited to watch these guys play in Summer League. Speaking of which, so before we dive into all of these free agency deadline dates and stuff like that, quick note, it sounded from a few different unverified sources overseas that the Bulls maybe added another guy as an undrafted free agent who played in the Turkish league. What do you know about this guy and if it's legit or not?
I don't know if it's legit or not. The little digging that I was able to do has it's been basically not confirmed. So I would probably wait until it's announced by the Bulls or Shams or Woj. There's probably a chance he's coming to play for the G League team, but we just don't know yet. So the fact that there's been some rumors, it's, maybe they're bringing him over, but he seems kind of like an interesting player. He's 2-time dunk champion. He's like 6'6" wing who can really shoot it. So seems like he would be exciting. Seems like he, has some potential to fill a need for this team. So if he's there for Summer League, I would love to watch it, but we just haven't gotten that information confirmed yet.
Gotcha. But so Julian Phillips and Adama Sanogo are probably likely to head towards Summer League and play on that team?
Almost certainly, yeah. We don't have the finalized roster yet. They are going to head out next Thursday. And we should have some practices next week. I believe Sunday they're going to do an introductory presser for Julian Phillips and then have practices for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week before heading to Vegas. So we will have more information for you then, but usually they release that information probably next week.
Cool. All right. Meanwhile, here in Chicago, some very key dates upcoming later this week for the Bulls and players who may or may not be remaining with the Bulls. Lawrence, can we take a look at some of these dates that we have coming up ahead, starting with this Thursday, June 29th, which is the deadline day for Andre Drummond to either pick up or decline his player option for next season, which I believe, if I recall, is like about $3.3 million in salary for Drummond next year on the player option. Interesting note that in his post-draft press conference, Arturas Karnisovas was asked about Drummond after having heard that Derrick Jones Jr. declined his option. No such decision had come yet from Andre Drummond, and AK basically said, yeah, we're still talking. We're not sure. We'll wait and see. Will, I mean, what do you make of the fact that we're kind of coming up close to it? Do you think Drummond is seriously considering declining this, and that's why we haven't heard any news yet?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think basically AK's comment was like, this is a personal decision for Andre. It's like, this is a player option. That's why they call it that. So I don't know that they've really been in the loop with it. Obviously, he made that comment on whatever it was, live stream or, playing Twitch or whatever. But that's not like an official commitment to the team. So he may be leaning that way. He may be waiting to see what happens with Vooch. Maybe there's an extension there. But his deadline to opt in or opt out is before the extension deadline for Vooch and the Bulls. So he'll probably have to make a decision before we have a final answer to that. But yeah, I mean, it could come down to the wire. I'm sure his agent is doing work to see if there would be any opportunities for him around the league to either make more money or get more playing time. But basically, the Bulls had a backup center rotation of Drummond and Derek Jones. And there were moments where Drummond was completely out of the rotation. There were moments when Derek Jones was completely out of the rotation. So maybe this is opportunity enough for him to want to stay, but we just haven't gotten that confirmation yet either. So we'll be on the lookout for that. And obviously we'll have shows all week for you guys listening and hopefully have some information to talk about at some point then about a player option.
Yeah, I hope
Dave, are you leaning one way or the other?
I hope he's weighing, all his options in this. This is exactly why it should take this long for him. Derek Jones Jr. one was shocking for me personally because of how quickly it came. I thought he was going to take a little more time to figure some stuff out and then do it, make his decision. But that's why it was a little shocking. This for me is normal. This is exactly how you should be doing it. Take your time. There's no rush for you. Figure out what's the best decision for you going forward. If it's another team, like Will just stated, that his agent could be looking at saying you can probably get more playing time over here and a little more money. Of course, you look at that, see, you want to weigh your comfort level. Drummond has come out and said he would love to be in Chicago. He enjoys being in Chicago. He wants to be here. So, yeah, but just weighing options is exactly what an NBA player is supposed to do. And for a guy who I think is going to get probably one more big contract in his career if this season goes solidly for him. So why not put yourself in the best position to probably do that? Because he'll just be, 30 years old. So put yourself in the best position possible to showcase what you can do this season. If that's with the Bulls, great. Fine. If it's not, great, fine. You know how I felt about Drummond. It's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde for me with Andre Drummond. I never associated Drummond with, winning. That was always my thing. But that's not to say that he isn't a talented player. And he isn't a great rebounder and obviously has a role specifically for him now on the Chicago Bulls, unless there's something else that Billy Donovan and them might be planning. But he's pretty much set at backup center if he wants that role. So we'll see what it is going forward. But yeah, he weighing all his options, taking his time is exactly what he should be doing.
And the other thing is, like, even if, and AK said this with regards to Derek Jones's free agency, but even if Andre or Derek Jones, the fact that he did opt out, become free agents, the Bulls could still re-sign them. Mm-hmm. So maybe they use that leverage to get a bigger deal from the Bulls. I think the Bulls should be careful about that. They've got very limited cap space, and we'll talk about that later. But that is on the table as well. So I think, if it were me and I was Andre Drummond, I probably would take this week to see if any other extensions kick in. We'll talk about Naz Reid here in a moment as well. His deal with the Timberwolves, like, he's going to be a third center too, but he just got 14 a year. Is that something that Andre could get closer to than 3.36? Probably, maybe, I don't know. So he'll have to do some homework on that, but I think that's also going to factor in here. Just like, what is the going rate for, high level backup centers around the league?
Yeah. Speaking of Bulls who could become free agents, but then re-sign a new deal and stay with the team, the next key date for the Bulls, obviously, being Friday, June 30th. That is this Friday. Not only the opening of the free agency window, we'll talk about that in a minute, but also the deadline for the Bulls and Nikola Vucevic to come to terms on a contract extension. Will, do you see this one way or the other as far as which one's more likely right now? It seems like Vuce, why not just explore any other opportunities and options out there as an unrestricted free agent? unless he and the Bulls are just right in lockstep on some deal that they already are close to having in place. Which do you see as a more likely outcome? That extension happens before Friday or by Friday, or that Vooch becomes an unrestricted free agent?
It's interesting because I think you could make an argument that both party has leverage in the situation. Vooch knows what the Bulls traded to get him. He knows that the team is still trying to remain competitive, and he knows that he just had an 82 games played season averaging 18 and 10. The Bulls can't really replace that type of production if Vooch walks for nothing. So he has some leverage. On the other hand, the teams that have cap space that Vooch can just walk into are the Spurs, the Magic, the Pacers, teams that don't really make sense for a guy who presumably wants to compete at a high level and win basketball games. So, is the mid-level exception, I believe it's going to be about $12.4 million this year. Is that going to entice him to go play with, another team that could be competitive, but below the salary cap? Maybe. So the Bulls kind of have to beat that offer, but by how much? Like, who else is going to really be paying or offering Vooch 17, 18, 20, $22 million out there? Probably there aren't going to be very many suitors. So I think this is a little bit of a game of chicken, a little bit of cat and mouse here. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does go into free agency just to kind of put pressure on the Bulls to say, well, look, I mean, I'm willing to take other offers. Maybe that happens, but maybe both parties are just like, you know what, let's just get this done. Let's skip all the shenanigans and bring you back. I think that's most likely, just because it seems like that's what both parties want. They want a reunion. So would it happen in the early days of free agency or over the course of this week? I'm not sure. But again, with this Naz Reid signing, I think that does kind of set some of the market in terms of what centers are going to be making now in this new CBA landscape. And if I'm Vooch and I see a third string center getting $14 million a year, like, why am I taking 14? Why am I taking 16? So it's going to get interesting. And maybe, over the course of the rest of this week here, there may be some more information that helps tip the scales one way or another.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch because I'm operating under the assumption that Vooch is going to be back here. That's the assumption I feel, because it feels like the Bulls put themselves in this situation because there was something said between the two parties. That's the only logical reasoning I could have in my head as to why a deal wasn't made at the trade deadline, or something wasn't given to him or traded for him, before you got to this point. But that's just how I kind of feel. But under that assumption, I feel like Vooch is at a point where he kind of values obviously winning, and I don't know how strong money is a factor for him. I don't know. This is, again, me assuming. It just feels like he enjoys, where he is, and enjoys stability and enjoys some comfort. Because like the teams Will just mentioned, he can go to those other teams and get that money and be competing for, the playoffs. Or you can do that here in a better city. You know what I'm saying? It gets like, that's just kind of how I look at it. Is your comfort level with that? If you want to do it in Indiana, you want to go to the Spurs. I mean, the Spurs are enticing only because you have Victor Wembanyama, and maybe you want to be, around that kind of player. Going back home to the Magic, where you're that guy, which would be hilarious. And I'm sure everybody would tell the Bulls a new one if he ends up back in the Magic. if that occurs, that would be absolutely hilarious. But I just feel like, and it just feels like he's going to be back here with the Chicago Bulls. Joe Cowley mentioned maybe he gives the Bulls a hometown discount. We'll see. But just to even say that kind of thing about Vooch lets me know that money isn't a strong motivator for him. I'm not saying it isn't a motivator. It just doesn't feel like a strong one. It feels like he just wants stability and wants to be put in a situation where he can win and enjoys being respected. And I know the Bulls have all those things kind of for him. And yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what he does. I don't know what this makes Vooch look like if he does go into free agency. Again, this is just me thinking that something was promised and something was cool. Does he look like a jerk? You know what I'm saying? For doing that. Personally, I just think he looks like an NBA player weighing his options if he does do something like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I just don't feel like money is his motivating factor going into free agency. But we'll see. We'll see.
I'm curious, Dave, if as the guy who made you finally blow your gasket this past season when the Wolves put up 150 points on the Bulls. You see a guy like Naz Reid getting an average annual salary of $14 million. I mean, not only do you find that insane, but also does it just make you like reaffirm in our collective belief that like, look, Vooch is probably getting 20 on the market.
Yeah, first of all, Naz Reid. Naz Reid.
There it is.
Damn. What? And not even the second string. Third? And he is 14. Wow. All right. Shout out to him. I'm not saying this because I'm mad at him. Shout out to him and his agent for getting that money. Minnesota, boy, they've done some things these past couple years. They have done some things these past couple years that just made me say, wow. And this is definitely one of them. But of course, I think more so, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, as far as how I'm looking at this, Will. But when I look at it, it feels more like this affects people like Drummond than it does Vooch, because Drummond coming off the bench and a guy, you know, with the player option who could leave and get that money like that. It feels like it affects his thinking more than Vooch's. Like Vooch just feels like he's the starting center. He knows his role. I got what it is. I don't care what Naz Reid makes. I'm me. So I'm going to be Vooch, period, point blank. And if I want to make more money, I know where I can go to get more money. He can go to those teams right there. But Naz Reid feels like it affects guys that are coming off the bench more, who people might not be looking at giving those kind of contracts to, like an Andre Drummond, because Vooch is going to get this paper. Like that's going to happen. It's gonna get more than Naz Reid. I don't know how much more. Like Will said, if teams offer him $22 million a year or something like that, it's possible. Like those things can happen for a team. I don't see it happening, but it's possible. But for me, Matt and Will, it changes the trajectory of guys coming off the bench more so than it does for the starting centers. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if I'm correct in looking at it like that.
Well, and Will, the other thing to keep in mind when you talk about Naz Reid's contract as a comparison marker for Vooch is he and his agent did get that player option in that 3-year, $42 million deal. And when we talk about Vooch and the running it back and re-signing Vooch is just like the move Bulls fans have to swallow, that what we don't necessarily want to see is the Bulls front office handing out yet another player option, which they've been giving away like candy since they got here. You know, Derrick Jones Jr. and Andre Drummond both having those player options that may not have been necessary. And whether or not the Vooch deal, if it's 3 years and 60 or something close to that, maybe not having a player option, Will.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the new landscape. And I think we're seeing the effects of the CBA happen really quickly with, you know, the John Collins trade that happened this morning. Dave, I think that this deal for Naz Reid affects everyone, not just the backup centers, also the starting centers. I mean, if this is what guys are getting paid, then you have to adjust accordingly. Now, the difference for me is Naz Reid is 23. Vooch is 32, and he is a 2-time All-Star. So for Naz Reid, you're paying him for production that you hope he provides you in the future. For Vooch, you're kind of paying a premium for the fact that he's been a really high-level player for the vast majority of his career. So you have to be careful about paying a guy into his mid to late 30s too much, because that production is going to decline, whereas the 23-year-old's production hopefully improves. So that's something to consider. The other thing is, like, 14 is sort of sticker shock. It sounds like a lot, but that's basically just slightly over what the mid-level exception is going to be. So that's effectively like if the Bulls were to have signed Alex Caruso for like $10.5 million instead of $9 million, which is, like, if you look at it back now, that's a great steal, right? That's a fantastic contract. It's the best move that AK has made in his time here. So I actually don't think that's going to be that much money. We're going to see some of these guys making more and more and more. That's why, like, the $40 million for Zach was never that big of a deal. And I think ultimately his contract is going to look like a bargain because, when Jaylen Brown signs his extension, it's going to be like 50, 55, and Zach's going to be making 40. So I just think that money is inflating at such a quick rate that it seems really jarring, but it's really not relative to the size of the cap. The percentage of the cap that these contracts take up is just pretty much the same. So all that to say, I still think Vooch is going to get paid. I don't see why he would go from I'm making $22 million a year and I just played 82 games and had a really solid season. Now I'm going to go down to 17 million or 16 million. Like I don't see him wanting to do that. But then if you're the Bulls, like at what point, at what dollar cost do you say, well, this is going to completely screw up our books for the next 3 years? If we have Vooch making $25 million a year for the next 3 seasons, like what is our path to the playoffs? What is our pathway to getting out of this financial jam that we're in? And is there sort of a walkaway price where, you know what, Vooch, like as good as you are, as much as we gave up to get you, like this just is going to hamstring us for the next 3 years. And this isn't what we want to do. Now, from the recent moves that the Bulls have made since AK kind of started doing things, it's been all win now. And so maybe they don't think about it that way. But as we talked about, you know, guys' salaries are going up. Vooch's salary is going to go up accordingly. And it's going to become harder and harder to move money around because of the penalty that you get for being in the second apron. That's why John Collins went for Rudy Gay and a second round pick. They saved a ton of money on that, but they got virtually nothing for a really solid 25-year-old player. The money is moving around and it is costing teams to move it around. And I think you're going to see a lot more of these big contracts get shipped around to these teams that have created space for themselves to say, all right, we'll take on your $25 million contract, but give me a first round pick with it. All right, we'll take on Jordan Poole, but now you got to take Chris Paul. And oh, by the way, we're going to take, you know, Ryan Rollins and a second round pick and then another second round pick. It's going to cost you a lot of money to move some of these contracts. And that's why my reservation or skepticism with how the Bulls are going to survive in the next couple of years has been so high, because I just don't see how you continue to add when you got to re-sign Vooch and that number is going to go up, when DeMar is going to be a free agent and that number is going to go up, and Zach's number keeps going up, and now you got to pay Kobe, and it's just going to get really hard to do that. So long-winded way of saying, guys, money is going to keep going up according to and relative to the number of the salary cap, and that, you know, having bad contracts on your book is going to be more of a penalty than ever before.
And Will, I wanted to say, like, I don't find it's not the sticker shock of it with Naz Reid. It's more so of the productivity that was more shocking to me, of the amount of money that he got, because this the backup to the backup. And I'm like, damn, like that's what you're getting for that, just to be that kind of role. That's what was more surprising to me than anything. But you're right. He's being 23 years old and he's being paid for what he, you know, could be. But it's hard for me to see that kind of productivity from a dude that's a backup to the backup. And maybe they know because it's their offense. You know what I'm saying? They'll figure it out, obviously, as they go. But that's just was my shock looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, he put up some good numbers this year. Sure. 18 and a half minutes per game, over 11
points,
game, right? 5 rebounds, shot really well from 3. So he gives you that stretch element. And basically, I mean, what the Wolves are doing is playing Cat at the 4, Gobert at the 5. So they basically always have a 2 big lineup if they want it. So he's more of like the third big rather than the third string center, which is the difference. But it could also indicate that maybe the Wolves are going to move on from Cat or Rudy Gobert. We'll see. Those big contracts, though, it's going to be tough to move. They're not going to get the same kind of haul they would have had they done this last year. And I think the Bulls are in kind of a similar situation, right? Like they may not be able to get as much as they would have had they made one of these bigger moves a year ago or 2 years ago. And that's fine, but it also may continue to go down. The value on return could continue to decline as the penalty for being in the first apron and the second apron gets higher and higher.
All right. Let's take our first break here. When we come back, we'll dive into the Bobby Marks free agency primer that he dropped on ESPN Plus this morning, and some of his thoughts on the Bulls there, monetary figures, roster moves, roster decisions. We'll get to that coming up on the other side of the break. While we're sharing words from our friends and sponsors, do us a simple, very quick favor and hit that thumbs up button if you're watching along on YouTube. Takes not even a second to do it, but it helps us out a lot and we appreciate it. Also, of course, make sure you're subscribed to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Big Dave, who do we got first today?
So, yeah, Baby Joey hit me up. I was checking in with him, seeing how he's doing. He said he's on his way to Nashville. He's going
Party with the Hawks crew.
Yeah, he didn't say he was with the crew, and I asked him how he was getting there. He said he's taking the PJ, and I was like, okay. He said he's on the PJ with CB. Take that for how you want it. You know what I mean? That's just what he said. You know what I mean? Take them initials.
Connor Bedard.
I'm not here to speculate. Baby Joey is a very cryptic person. So that's all he sent me. That's all I saw. And then, of course, he told me that he never understood. He said CV never understood. He said he ain't get it, and he don't get it. Why do these glasses cost so much money? He don't get why it is, and neither does Shady Rays, y'all. They don't understand it, and so they did something about it. The independent sunglasses company that offers world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair that you've ever put on your beautiful face. Those durable frames, those extremely clear optics, those premium polarized shades that you can put on your face at an affordable price for those outdoor. And when he gets back into the frame, he's going to prove it to you. And there he is, Matt Peck, your indoor adventures. Plus, as always, the Matt Peck and broken replacements plan. Because when that hat goes flying and the glasses go splat, Matt's going to be upset for two reasons. One, because the Bulls did something. And two, because those glasses are broken. But now he can do something about one of those things. He can send those glasses right back in to Shady Rays. They will send him a brand new pair, no questions asked, even though they might ask him a question why he keeps breaking these glasses. But if you want to get yourself a pair that fits you personally, and you say, man, I don't like this pair right here, this is not my style, well, guess what? You can send it back in and get your own style to fit you, and then stop trying to copy Will the Go Gottlieb, because you can't do it. You can't look like that. Damn it. Get your own glasses that look like you and make you look awesome. You can do that as long as you send that back within 30 days. You can do that for free. There's no risk when you shop, and their team always has your back. So exclusively for the listeners out there, Shady Rays is giving out that best deal of the seasons. Go to shadyrays.com. Use the code CHGO for 50% off of 2+ pairs of premium polarized shades. Try for yourself. The shades that are rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people, because the Shady Rays, y'all, with the Rays are just oh so shady.
Oh, so shady. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at ComEd, whose energy efficiency program is committed to helping families and businesses in the communities they serve, helping manage energy usage and lower those energy bills now and into the future. ComEd offers a wide variety of incentives on lighting and other efficiency upgrades to commercial, industrial, and public sector customers across their vast territory. ComEd also offers free facility assessments that can help you find energy-saving opportunities like for HVAC systems, commercial kitchen equipment, and industrial processes. You're probably wondering, that sounds great, but how the heck does it work?
I am dying to know, how the heck does it work?
I'll tell you. An authorized engineer works with you to develop a detailed assessment plan specific to your goals and your needs. These can be done in person or virtually and last for approximately 2 hours. Then, within 3 to 4 weeks, customers receive a report detailing energy efficiency projects they can start working on right away. Each recommendation will include estimated energy savings, cost savings, project costs, potential incentives, and simple payback plans. If you own a business, 1, way to go! That rocks! 2, don't wait. Get started saving money and energy today. For energy saving tips, lighting incentives, or to schedule your free facility assessment, go to ComEd.com/poweringbiz.
Wait, I see it in the bottom left-hand corner of our screen here, but it's pretty small. Is that ComEd.com/poweringbiz? Is that what that says?
That's correct. Go to ComEd.com/poweringbiz, B-I-Z-biz. Schedule your appointment today. All right, before we move along, just wanted to give a couple shout outs to people who threw us some super chats. AK, great question about Vooch. Let's save that question for if and when the Bulls do re-sign Vooch, and we're talking X's and O's. But appreciate the super chat. Hold that question in your pocket. We will circle back to it. Also, shout out to Monsi, who threw us a super chat saying, I'll give up the rest of the hair on my receding hairline just for the Bulls to decently go over the luxury tax. That is such a selfless offer, Monsi. That's very nice. I would make no such offer. I like my hair too much. What about you, Will?
No comment.
That hairline looks
I will
just
say
fine, buddy.
The comments right now are so funny. People are going nuts in here. Will, you look so done. Will has to cover this team. I'd be done too. I think Will is working harder than AK on trade options. You guys are killing me.
Will's never done.
I can't be done.
Beaten down,
It's my
maybe
affliction.
maybe a little bit. Defeated, absolutely not. All right, guys, let's take a look at this free agency primer that Bobby Marks released on ESPN Plus this morning. In case you don't have ESPN Plus, we took a screenshot of it here for you. Let's start with the numbers, Will, because we're going to take a look at your most recent salary cap projection later on in today's show. But these numbers, as far as below the tax, first apron, and second apron, do those more or less line up with what you have seen and what you're working with numbers-wise, with his assumption here of players who are under contract and players who might be on their way out?
Yeah, so I mean, that's all basically just with the guaranteed roster spots right now. So Zach, DeMar, Alonzo, Caruso, Pat, Drummond, until he decides whether or not he's going to pick up his player option. Dalen Terry, Marco, and Carlik Jones are the only currently guaranteed spots on the roster. Obviously, Drummond could opt out. The Bulls could waive Marco and Carlik. Both of those are non-guaranteed up until a certain point. But then the reason why it's so far below the tax is because of the cap holds. So this doesn't count what is sort of the projected number for each of these free agents. And that's where things get a little bit closer, certainly to the tax, but way below the salary cap.
Right. And it's worth noting that Marco and Carlik, you mentioned, could be waived and not fully guaranteed as of right now. That date for Marko Simonovic, his $1.8 million is fully guaranteed on the Bulls books for the 23-24 season on July 7th. So if he is not waived by July 7th, which is a week from this Friday when free agency begins, that is when Marco's contract becomes guaranteed. Carlik Jones, meanwhile, and this is according to SpotTrack per usual, not fully guaranteed until January 10th of 2024. So midway through this next season, only $250,000 guaranteed on Carlik Jones's deal at the beginning of the 23-24 season, opening night specifically. So when it comes to those two, do you see either of them realistically being, waive potential kind of candidates? Because Carlik Jones, shout out to him, G League MVP, showed a lot of people a lot of good stuff. I know a lot of people out there in Bulls Nation have been curious about his potential at the NBA level, especially given this team's dire need for a point guard. But there is a bit of a concern about his size and maybe some liabilities on the defensive end being taken advantage of because of that size. Marco, I know he is a draft pick from this Bulls front office of AK and Eversley, but this is not a Nikola Jokic situation. Yes, he's a second-round pick from Europe, but yes, he's put up decent numbers with Windy City, but unless they are just so we can't let go of these guys we've drafted, I use that roster spot for someone better.
Absolutely. And that's been the problem here, right? Is that they haven't really used those back-end roster spots to bring in new talent, to try guys out, and most importantly, to bring in some shooters to space the floor for the guys. So I think we're in this situation where it just seems like they're very married to all their players, certainly the guys at the top, right? Like your Zachs, your DeMars, your Vuces, your Patricks, your Lonzos, they can't do anything with that contract. You got Kobe, you got Alex Caruso. It's okay, they're not going to move any of those guys. So are you going to bring in some help around them? If so, you got to clear out some of these back-end roster spots. So as great as Carlik was, and maybe they kind of did him a solid at the end of the year to give him a guaranteed NBA contract. I would not be surprised if they waive him and then re-sign him to the G League team or a two-way spot. Marco, it's Jokic averaged 10 points a game his rookie season. Marco can't even get in a game during garbage time in his third year. So it's it's over, guys. Let's move on. Let's filter in some new roster spots. I think not doing that would be if we're talking about running it back, right? That's the formula to do it. You just bring in a bunch of back end guys and hope they work out. Hope you can add enough shooting to actually make a difference here. So as much as a big trade would be a major shakeup. Like, to not do that, I think would be to not do the bare minimum, which would be really bad.
Yeah, very bad. Like Will said, I thought it was over for Marco last year.
Probably should have been, but that's another.
But
we talked about the player options. That was another one where they just gave him 3 years guaranteed when they probably didn't need to, and they definitely shouldn't have in retrospect.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll see what they roll with. I think my question to you is, are these, like I'm talking about Marco and Carlik, are those contracts basically, and those moves that they make on them, basically just waiting to see what they do with Vooch?
I ultimately think they both get waived, and it's not really, dependent on whatever happens with the rest of the roster. I mean, the only way I could see them keeping those guys, and even in this scenario, it's probably wise to bring in some new blood anyway, would be if they like traded everybody. They like totally blew it up, and then went for a youth movement and just like said, all right, Marco, here's the ball. Like, play with Patrick Williams, play with Kobe White. Let's see what we can do here. But I don't really see that happening. Maybe they bring him back on a G League contract or a 2-way contract, but to be taking up an NBA roster spot at this point, I don't think there's just no argument for that.
Yeah, zero. There's zero argument for that at all. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So, yeah, he's got to go to the G League, bro. Like, there's no way he can be on an NBA roster at all, especially being on a roster where Billy Donovan clearly is not going to play you a second of basketball, even when they're up by 30 or down by 30. Billy's not going to put him in until there's 30 seconds left in the game. So it's really no point in having him, even on that level. So I'm more interested in seeing what they do with the guys like Javonte Green, who I'm sure you're probably getting to in the second pick. But I'm more interested to see who they do with that. But I don't want to step on your toes before I walk into that.
Get out of my head, Dave. Get out of there. Lawrence, can we take another look at that Bobby Marks graphic, if you please? Because there's a couple categories here with key free agents and then who might be gone. I wanted to touch on these two names specifically, that being Patrick Beverly and Javonte Green. We know that DJJ has declined his player option, is going to free agency. We feel like there's a good chance, from what AK said, that Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu will be offered new contracts. There hasn't been much said about Pat Bev, and there hasn't been anything said about Javonte. Let's start with Pat, who clearly, if you follow him on Twitter, is convinced that the Bulls are going to win the championship next season if they run it back. I swear, Pat Bev has been talking to our friend C-Red Fred. He is convinced. Pat Bev's going to switch his number to 7 on the back of his jersey, and he's convinced the Bulls are about to get title number 7. Hashtag run it back. We've also heard Pat Bev say on his own podcast that he wants $15 million annually this summer. So what are the Bulls going to try to convince him for a hometown discount and give him a full mid-level exception of $12.5 million? I'd say that's insane. What do we think as far as the realistic possibilities here of Pat Bev and the Bulls finding themselves a new deal?
I mean, it's possible it could happen. I honestly don't see Patrick Beverly back here. I don't see him in my head or in the Bulls' plans, especially because of that number strictly. Like, he's made his point. Like, this is what I want. This is how much money I want. I'm looking like, word?
He's not getting that.
Like,
he's not getting that anywhere.
You're not getting that, bro. Like, that is not going to be the case. Maybe if he goes to another team like Houston or something, I don't know, but it just won't be here with the Bulls. I don't see it happening here with the Bulls. I believe they'll clear that spot, but I'd be a little surprised, honestly, if Patrick Beverly was back here. I'm not gonna be mad if he is, but I'm curious to see what kind of money is going to be exchanged, because if it's anywhere close to what he's talking about, I'm going to be pissed.
If it's anything other than a vet minimum, I'd be pissed.
Anywhere close to what he's talking about, I'm going to be pissed. Seriously. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, and I mean, Pat is gonna. I mean, that's Pat, right? He's gonna chirp. That's Patrick Beverly. So if I were him, I'd be saying I wanted $15 million too. In fact, Brandon, if you're listening, I want $1 contract. Okay. But so the Bulls have non-bird rights on Patrick Beverly. So if they wanted to give him more than the veteran minimum, they could either give him the non-bird rights, which is $3.7 million. They could give him the biannual exception, which is like 4.1, and the part of or the whole $12.2 million mid-level exception. He could also get the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is going to be half of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception from any other team who is in the tax. So if he wanted to go play for the Clippers, or if he wanted to go play for, the Heat or some other team that's like already into the tax, he could get that salary from them. And obviously that's probably more than the Bulls are going to be able to afford. So I agree with you. I doubt that he is back. Maybe he just really likes it here. And obviously like the Bulls played a lot better with him. So, maybe that's what they want. But I do kind of find it hard to believe that he would settle for that kind of money when I think he will have like non-taxpayer mid-level options out there.
Getting that Nas Reed money.
Nas Reed money. Damon in the comments, meanwhile, saying, please don't bring Pat Bev back. That dude's selling snake oil. Yeah. That's one way to put it.
He's a heck of a salesman, man. Shout out to him for that.
Okay, so let's shift to Javonte now. Bulls fans have had a not even a love-hate relationship, just like a love him when he's on the floor, but not hate him when he's off the floor. Javonte dealing with some injuries over the past couple of years. The 5 Javonte's thing is awesome. It's awesome. And what he does for them when he's out there on the defensive end and the highlight reel plays he makes in transition, it adds a certain level of entertainment and fun and wow factor to Bulls basketball, and also gives them some great stuff on the defensive end that they need. But how reliable is he behind the 3-point line? He's hit or miss. He's literally hit or miss behind the 3-point line. And I don't know if that's a player they can afford to pay to keep around if they're actually trying to address this 3-point shooting problem that the roster currently has. We've basically heard nothing about Javonte and what's going to happen with him this offseason. Will, what do you think?
It's really tough because of the injury and the fact that he couldn't play for the vast majority of the second half of the season. I mean, he was technically cleared, but he'd get in for a game here and then sit for 4. And you just really feel for him because like this, he was playing so well the last year and a half, and then he got hurt. But it's like this might have been his chance to get a real contract. So just kind of terrible news for him. But as we talked about, like the Bulls have to weigh their options here and seriously look at shooters. That has to be the priority. But on the other hand, what do the Bulls want to be as a basketball team? They want to be a team that defends. They want to be a team that runs in transition. And they want to be a team that in the half court can just, get really good offense through their big 3. And Javonte does 2 of those 3 things. So I think in terms of their identity in the basketball team they want to be, he does help them. But I think it's just like, is that more important than certainly when you're coming off of an injury and he may not even have those skills and abilities anymore? Is that more important than trying to bring in shooters? And I think at this point, unfortunately, you'd have to say no. The fact that Derek Jones has opted out, like maybe you do want to reserve that power forward spot. And let's not forget, like Javonte was inserted into the starting lineup and got hurt that game against the Golden State Warriors last year. They really like him. He played really well, but it's like, do you just want to add an influx of new talent, or do you want to just keep running this thing back? Because as we'll talk about here with the cap sheet, like there aren't a lot of options. And if you're looking at veteran minimums and he's one of the guys available, like he's probably going to be one of the more talented ones, even though he doesn't address what I think and what we all think is probably the biggest glaring weakness with this team.
Yeah. And that's it right there, Will. It's that 3-point shot for him. Like the athleticism is awesome. How fans feel about him is great. He's great to watch. Like when he's got a point guard around him, he's even better. Watching him on the break is phenomenal to watch, just for somebody like me who enjoys watching transition basketball when guys know how to run those lanes. Like the way he runs the lane. I said this to Will 1,000 times watching Javonte Green, just how he runs the lane. Like it's awesome to watch. But at this point in time, it's a luxury, to be real. Like that's what it is. Without a 3-point shot, it's a luxury to have that kind of guy on your team when you got a team full of those kind of guys, you know what I'm saying, who can do those things also, but can't shoot a 3. So it's becoming a luxury now for a guy like Javonte. And then his health comes into question as well. It was lightning in a bottle when we put him at the 4 and we were just running cats out there, man. It was lightning in a bottle. And then the next year, teams kind of caught up to what you were doing. With or without a point guard, they kind of caught up to what you were doing. Like, yeah, you're still small. We get what's going on here. But yeah, it feels like a luxury to me, Will. Like that's what it feels like. And they can't afford that kind of luxury of a guy who is not consistent with his 3-point shot, even though all the great intangibles that he brings as far as making your offense and your defense a little bit better. Coming off the bench or as a starter, like a plug and play kind of guy that could put it the 2, 3, or the 4 as he proved. But without that shot, I just don't see how they give him the money and bring him back.
But the thing is, like, you know, as Anthony says here in the comments, like Green is fine for an end of bench guy for the minimum. Mm-hmm. That's true, but it's like, is that who the Bulls want to be their end of bench minimum guy? If you're bringing back Vooch and DeMar and Zach and Lonzo and Patrick and Kobe and Ayo, and now you're also bringing back Javante, and you've got Dalen Terry and you've got Julian Phillips, that's 10 roster spots, and you've got like 2 shooters, Zach and Kobe, and you've got 1 guy who can't play. So like as good as he is, and I think he is value at that number, which the veteran minimum, I mean, that's like maybe one of the best value veteran minimums that would be out there. But is it worth it to like the opportunity cost of not really changing your team at all? Because that's, I think, where when you get to the point where you don't want to change anybody at the top and you don't want to change anybody at the bottom, you're just running it back. And I think we all know that that's not the best path forward.
All right, before we take our second break and move on after the break to Will's latest cap projection, I did want to make mention of one more thing on Bobby Marks's free agent primer, because this to me was the most breaking news as far as what it entailed. Lawrence, if you please put that up one more time. Who might be gone? Look whose name is there. Goran Dragic. Goran Dragic might be gone this summer, you guys. Well, I know Bobby Marks has been working his tail off. The offseason is really busy for him with all this NBA contract stuff, free agent stuff, salary stuff, trades that he breaks down, all of the pieces of. I'm going to give him a pass on this one. Man might be sleep deprived right now, but come on, man. Where you been? Dragic's been gone for months.
It's not here, man. It's not coming back, bro. Like, he's out of there. That's what
Who
it
you
is.
talking to?
But it's Bobby Marks. He's allowed to make that mistake. It's all right. It's all
good.
right.
We forgive you, Bobby. It was just I had a good laugh when I saw that this morning. All right, let's take our second break. We'll come back, wrap up with some more salary cap talk. Hit that thumbs up button while we're sharing these words from our friends and sponsors. Dave.
FOCO. That's where you go to get fitted out in the best sports gear around. That rhyme, by the way. FOCO. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, everything in betwixt. It's spring and it's baseball season. Just saw my White Sox won a series against the Red Sox. That was awesome to see. How about Luis Robert having 21 home runs and over 20 doubles? I believe one of the only 7 White Sox players to do that in history, which is pretty awesome. Frank Thomas did it like 3-4 times, which is ridiculous. But yes, awesome to them. The Cubs over in London having a good old time, split it out there. They did a solid job. But yes, the baseball teams are actually playing baseball, and they're looking like, okay. So why don't you go out there and enjoy them? And the best way to do that is having some FOCO gear around you. Get them Aloha shirts, the straw hats, the polos, and of course, the bags. You got to have it. Everything you're going to need to enjoy that game in the park or at the tailgate. And of course, when we're on set, those set decorations they got hooked up for us behind us. I know you have to look at the Quaff King, but you got to get that off your face and look behind him and see all the awesome set decorations that are going on, because FOCO helped us set that up. And so since they showed us some love, why don't you do the same? Why don't you go to FOCO.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO for 10% off, because it's FOCO. Faux show.
Quick reminder to everybody that now is the time. If you've been on the fence, if you've been waiting, I don't know why, to sign up to become a CHGO diehard, because we have the latest perk for you right around the corner, and that's the Crosstown Series between the Cubs and White Sox coming up later this summer. We have fun events planned for both the south side and the north side of the Crosstown Series games, and you can get yourself a ticket to said party. It's a Crosstown takeover. We're doing a pregame and then tickets for the Sox hosted one. We're doing the same thing up on the north side for the game that the Cubs are hosting later this summer. Also, if you buy the ticket package for this Crosstown Series takeover, you get a free shirt with that deal. And we made crosstown specific CHGO shirts, one with Cubs hat saying North Side, one with White Sox hat saying South Side. You get a free shirt. You get ticket to the game. You get the pregame partying, and all wrapped up in one neat little package. And if you are a CHGO diehard, you get that at a discounted price. There you go. Lawrence found that for you. Check them out. Those shirts are dope. I want one of those Cubs side, North Side shirts. So awesome. Go find it. You see there it is on the CHGO Cubs Twitter handle. You can find the links there, both for non-diehard members and diehard members. Diehard members get a discounted price for this amazing package of a shirt, ticket to the game, and pre-game activities and festivities. Get yours for whichever one you want to go to, or maybe both. These are already selling like hotcakes. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm probably going to go to one, if not both, myself. So check it out. And there's your latest reason to become a CHGO diehard. Go to allchgo.com/diehard to sign up. All right, guys. Free Agency Friday. The Bulls cap sheet is a bit of a nightmare. We talked on our Friday show last week about the fact that AK hinted at the fact that he and the owners / his bosses are prepared to enter the luxury tax in order to improve this team this season, despite Michael Reinsdorf saying a year ago, I don't want to pay the luxury tax for a team that's an 8th seed or out of the playoffs, and the Bulls are coming on the heels of a 10th seed season. Minor details. However, the numbers are what they are, and Will, you have your latest cap projection sheet that we wanted to take a look at here with some assumption numbers for Vooch and Kobe White, amongst other things. Let's take a look at that now. So with these additions recently, with the news recently, players added, DJJ declining his player option. We're assuming for now with this current projection that Andre Drummond is opting in to his. Where are we now compared to where we were, say, a week or so ago, Will?
Yeah, so basically there's a lot of different colors here. It's maybe looks a little complicated, but the keys here are, on the left side, obviously is the 2023-24 season. In the yellow highlighted numbers are what roughly we're projecting salaries to be. So at the press conference, AK said that he plans to extend qualifying offers to Io and for Kobe. That means that, you can offer him, Io's number is 5.2 million. Kobe's is about 7.7 or 7.8. I would imagine Io accepts his, which I think, I just imagine that would be like a pretty enticing offer for him, one that I don't think he'd turn down. Whereas Kobe, I think probably is able to get a little bit more, would reject that qualifying offer and either enter restricted free agency or come to an agreement on a contract for his next deal. And then Vooch, we talked about it with Naz Reid. Is 14 million gonna be sufficient? Probably not. Is 18 million gonna be the team friendly offer that the Bulls are hoping for? Probably not. Even 20 million is like 2 million below what he made last year. So is that even going to be enough? Not sure, but just for our purposes here, that was kind of our guesstimate. And then, you look down the roster, we've got Justin Lewis and Julian Phillips making the minimum along with 3 open roster spots, all plugged in for the minimum. So if you look at that and then you scroll down to team totals and cap space, you are about $28 million over the salary cap, but $1 million below the luxury tax. So that's where you are if those are the contracts that you give out and you fill out the rest of the roster with veteran minimums. So we're looking at basically running it back here and being right at the tax line. Same as last year. This could totally depend on, if Vooch does take $14 million, that opens up a lot of space. If Kobe does take the qualifying offer, that opens up a lot of space. If the Bulls offer Io the veterans minimum and he takes that obviously changes the calculation. But basically the point is there's not a lot of money to go around here. Certainly not to get a guy like a Max Strus or a Fred VanVleet, names that I've seen in my Twitter mentions every day for the past month. That's just not going to happen unless there's a major move. And that's why we've been talking about, well, look, maybe they do try to find a deal for Zach or DeMar. Maybe they do try to pull off a sign and trade for Vooch. That does make you worse this season because those guys are really good. But also, are you really trying to get married to this roster for not just Lawrence, can you throw it back up one more time? not just for this year, but maybe for next year and the year after that. Like we could end up seeing, if they really invest in DeMar and Vooch, the same team for like 3 more seasons. And I think that's where you start to like really, scratch your head and question what is the plan here, because this could be their chance to really reset. But you could also see some very different numbers. I mean, maybe Vooch, they give him a 1-year sort of balloon deal for much more money, and they just go into the tax, but then they let him walk as a free agent next year. They let DeMar walk as a free agent next year. And then you really open up some space. There is some optionality here, but if you're looking at multi-year deals for your older players, and, these are the numbers you're looking at for your free agents, there's not a lot of space to add anybody. And I think that's where the concern and the skepticism comes of like, well, what about this roster? Why do we give them the benefit of the doubt that this roster is worth continuing to reinvest in, that we think that this team can be better version of what they were last year, except with this time without Patrick Beverly? Those are the questions that I have. And look, maybe AK and hopefully AK is much more creative and thoughtful and imaginative than I am. But these are my questions, looking at just like what space the Bulls have to work with here. And the answer is not much.
Lawrence, I'm a little upset that you didn't throw up the wheel graphic that you made of him at the board getting everything together, man. You should have that ready to go. I think you had that ready to go. Supposed to have that. Man, it's flexing out here.
I did find it interesting that as part of those Bobby Marks free agent primers that we were talking about a minute ago, he had Kobe White. So he like classified free agents in tiers. And he had Kobe White in tier 3, which he called like the 5 million to 12.4 million exception tier of free agents. So basically like somewhere between being biannual worthy and full mid-level worthy. And Will, you said you were a bit surprised to see Kobe White there being capped at maybe just getting the full mid-level, and you could see the Bulls offering him more than that. Can you like expand upon that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the Bulls are not in a position where they can let him walk. Maybe they find a sign and trade. Maybe looking at the cap sheet, with this desire to compete at the highest level this year, maybe they do just move on from him and find somebody who can be as productive as Kobe could have been this year, but maybe is, significantly older, provides that same kind of value or more this year, but it opens up more space in the long term. I'm not really sure what the motivations are, but if you're looking at keeping your guy, like I just don't see why Kobe would take less than the mid-level exception. Maybe it is just the mid-level exception, but if I were him, I would be, if that's the kind of offer I was getting, I'd be looking around a little bit. And that's why, like when, it was rumored that like Patrick Williams could look at $20 million a year. That's why, because like the mid-level exception is 12. If every single team in the league can offer you that, why would the Bulls win a deal when they're offering that money? Like they have to beat the rest of the league. So that's why I think that number will be a little bit higher for Kobe. Again, those are all just estimations. And I've seen a couple of questions about like Dalen Terry making 16 million in 2026. That's just a cap hold. That's not actually what he's going to end up making. It's just the number that you have down on the books right now, based on the fact that he's going to be a bird right free agent. So don't necessarily worry about that right now, but it does factor into, some of the numbers that we're looking at next year for guys like DeMar, where you do get pushed up against the tax if you are going to resign him for like less than what his cap hold is, which I believe is like 45 million. Obviously they're not going to go that high, but point being, they just don't have a lot of space. But so they have to just like weigh all their priorities against one another. Do they want to be competitive? Yes. So if that's the truth, then how do we go about doing that? Do we re-sign our guys? Do we let them walk because we don't want to go into the cap and try to, or into the tax and try to like find cheaper value deals? If so, what does that mean for our long term? Are we thinking about that? Are we not? Like these are the questions that they have to weigh. And for me, I look at this and I think, this team is like good enough to be competitive. I think they underperformed based on their talent last year. Obviously they got some good luck with health, and I think they all had individually good seasons. Maybe they are better than next year. Maybe we do give them the benefit of the doubt. But what happens in 2 or 3 years? How are we building this thing out on a longer term basis where we're thinking about our long-term cap holds, our long-term books, and thinking about sustainable growth over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? That's where If you're not succeeding now and you're not setting yourself up to succeed later, then like we have to have a conversation about what we're doing here.
Wonderful. And that's why I am very, very excitedly curious to see what the heck AK has up his sleeve. If he does have something up his sleeve, because he certainly spoke at that press conference like someone who was telling people to chill out. I've got a plan.
Yeah,
but
maybe there's a sign and trade. Maybe there's a big trade of Zach or DeMar. Like that could still happen. But
right.
As it stands, if what he's saying is true about running it back, it's going to be tight.
Right. So those running it back. Thank you, Lawrence.
There we go.
There's Will freaking out in the mailroom. Carol. If
hand.
Those running it back numbers that you have on this freshly updated cap projection you made today, Will, with modest and fair numbers for Vooch and Kobe and Ayo included in that, if those numbers are true and that part of the running back plan happens, then you're talking about 3 veteran minimums to round out the roster and stay just under the tax. Like that does not go along with what AK told us at all, which was this isn't good enough. We need to get better and we need to address shooting, and just you wait and see what we do in free agency. You can't say just you wait and then sign the same guys back who are already here along with a couple of vet minimum deals. You can't do that. So that's why we're all on the edge of our seats right now. Sadly, we are out of time for today. But fear not, we will be back tomorrow, back in studio with a fresh episode, 4:00 in the afternoon, Chicago time. Anything else that happens on the NBA trade rumor, NBA free agency rumor tonight and into the day tomorrow, we will address on tomorrow's show. I'm not sure if you saw it. I tweeted out from our CHGO Bulls team account. Mark Stein, on his latest Substack that dropped midday today, did mention the Bulls as a potential destination for one Derrick Rose. So we can get into that tomorrow a little bit too if we want. In the meantime, you can follow Will for all of his great Bulls coverage. Will_Gottlieb. Read everything he writes. AllCHGO.com. Big Dave is at BAWL Sports. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Get your ticket for those crosstown takeovers. Available now on our website, AllCHGO.com. Shout out, thank you, and love, as always, to our producer and our pal, Lawrence, behind the scenes. That's it for today. We will talk to you tomorrow. Hit that like button on your way out if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at 4. See you, Red. Be good.